Last week, we were still discussing the possible scenario of war breaking out on the European continent. Now, that scenario, the worst scenario, has happened. I have friends in Kiev currently locked in bunkers, fearing for their lives, and family across the border in neighboring countries. This episode hits particularly close to home. In this Flashpoint, we take a closer look at Ukraine. On Monday, Putin recognized Donetsk and Luhansk in Ukraine as independent states. President Putin signed a decree to recognize Donetsk and Luhansk as independent states. He signed a decree on Monday, February 21st, to make the Moscow-backed areas in Ukraine independent, quote, people's republics. The areas in Ukraine are controlled by Russian-backed separatists. The claim of independence covers the entire oblast of Donetsk and Luhansk, whereas the conflict, up until now, was only limited to parts of Donetsk and Luhansk. The move on Monday was believed to likely escalate tensions between Russia and Ukraine and increase the prospect of an invasion from Russia. Little did we know how much would happen in 1 week alone. On Tuesday, the UK announced sanctions on 5 Russian banks and 3 wealthy individuals. Britain said it would impose sanctions on 5 Russian banks and 3 high net wealth individuals. Boris Johnson announced, warning that Vladimir Putin was planning a full-scale invasion of Ukraine. The Prime Minister said the tough package of sanctions represented the first step of UK's retaliatory action. He said any assets the banks or individuals have in the UK will be frozen, and British firms will be banned from doing business with them. A quote by the Prime Minister: "This is the first tranche, the first barrage of what we are prepared to do." On Wednesday, Ukraine imposed a state of emergency and told its citizens in Russia to leave immediately, as Moscow began evacuating its Kiev embassy in the latest ominous signs of an all-out Russian military onslaught. Shelling intensified on Wednesday at the line of contact in eastern Ukraine, where Russian President Vladimir Putin recognized the independence of the 2 Moscow-backed rebel regions, and where he has ordered the deployment of Russian troops as, quote, peacekeepers. But there was still no clear indication of whether he plans to follow that up with a massed assault on Ukraine involving the tens of thousands of troops he has gathered near his neighbors' borders. Also on Wednesday, President Joe Biden announced that the United States would impose sanctions on the company in charge of building Russia's Nord Stream 2 gas pipeline, expanding penalties on Moscow after it recognized the 2 breakaway regions in eastern Ukraine. The sanctions, which target the Nord Stream 2 AG company and its corporate officers, had to pressure on the Baltic Sea project that was designed to double the gas flow capacity from Russia to Germany. The US State Department spokesman said the US move makes the pipeline, quote, no longer part of the equation in negotiating with Russia. Quote, that is now an $11 billion price project that is a piece of steel at the bottom of the ocean, Net Price said on Wednesday. Nord Stream 2 AG is a registered Swiss firm whose parent company is the Russian state-owned gas giant Gazprom. Now, at this point in time, there was still hope. And on Thursday, the world woke up to international war having returned to the European continent. Total mobilization, war everywhere, Kiev being shelled, Ukrainians fleeing towards Slovakia, Hungary, and Poland. Ukraine's Interior Ministry said Russia's invasion had begun, with reports of troops crossing the border from multiple directions, especially in the north across the border with Belarus, in the south from Crimea and the eastern contested part of the country. Explosions occurred in multiple cities, including the capital Kiev. Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky introduced martial law across the country on Thursday, urging citizens to remain calm. Before the crack of dawn, just before explosions began in cities across Ukraine, Russian state television unexpectedly broadcast an address by Russian President Vladimir Putin. The two self-proclaimed People's Republics of Donetsk and Luhansk in the breakaway Ukrainian region of Donbass, which he had officially recognized as independent less than 2 days before, had, quote, turned to Russia with a request for help, end quote, he said. To answer that call, he was launching a special military operation, in his words. Its purpose was to demilitarize and denazify Ukraine. Within minutes, Russian missiles began hitting targets in Ukraine. Quote, our actions are self-defense against threats, end quote, he told his fellow Russians, claiming Moscow had no plans to occupy Ukraine. Quote, we do not plan to impose ourselves on anyone, he insisted. Putin described the special military operation, in limited terms, to protect people living in Donbass who, he claimed, had been subjected to genocide, a charge that Ukraine has strenuously denied. But in the next breath, he lashed out more broadly. Quote, NATO supports Ukrainian neo-Nazis. Our actions are self-defense against threats. Putin warned other countries against, quote, the temptation of meddling in ongoing events, and said Russia will respond, and the response will, quote, lead you to consequences that you have never encountered in your history, end quote. On Friday, Russian troops bore down on Kiev, and explosions and gunfire sounded around the city on the second day of Russia's attack on Ukraine, as President Putin demanded Ukrainian troops to lay down their arms. The invasion focused on the Ukrainian capital on Friday, and residents heard explosions starting before dawn, and gunfire was reported in several areas. 5 explosions struck near a major power plant on Kiev's eastern outskirts, said Mayor Vitaly Klitschko. There was no information on what caused them, and no electrical outages were immediately reported. Additionally, gunfire broke out on a bridge across the Dnieper River, dividing eastern and western Kiev, while another key bridge to the capital was blown away. Some residents sheltered in underground metro stations. Additionally, at that time, Russians were believed to be nearing Kiev, about 8 to 9 kilometers. The famous nuclear or former nuclear power plant Chernobyl was seized. Zelensky asked for a UN peacekeeping mission. Zelensky and his family were believed to be the target, and an air alarm was sounding over Lviv. Now the latest I've seen, this was yesterday, so on Sunday, is over 300,000 displaced Ukrainian refugees. The Russian military believed to have surrounded both the first and second city of the country, being Kiev and Kharkov. The latter is believed to also have been entered by Russian mobile units. However, this was later disputed by the Ukrainian military, so at this point in time it's unclear what the fate of Kharkov is to me. President Putin on Sunday ordered Russia's nuclear deterrent forces to be on high alert, ratcheting up tensions as Ukraine agreed to talks with Russian officials, and the European Union moved to close its airspace to all Russian flights. In a statement, Ukrainian President Zelensky said he had agreed to meet with the Russians on the border of Belarus, quote, without preconditions, after speaking with that country's President Lukashenko. Lukashenko, a Putin ally, quote, has taken responsibility for ensuring that all planes, helicopters and missiles stationed on Belarusian territory will remain on the ground during Ukrainian delegations' travel, talks, and return, Zelensky's office said. I guess this shows again how quickly things can escalate and deteriorate to the worse. While it doesn't mean much, all my warmth and love and well wishes go out to the people of Ukraine, hoping that this conflict will end soon. This has been your Global Security Flashpoint. See you all next week.